So right now we actually have a guest, and the guest's name's Irvin. Like I said, he is the founder of hemperor.net, which is an information site with so much information it will spin your head. So right now we're going to pull Jan up. Jan? Hello, Jan?
Yes, Patrick, how are you doing this, I guess for you this afternoon?
Yeah, it's afternoon, morning there, and that's the amazing thing about the world is it's always a different time somewhere else. And the good thing about Philadelphia here is now we have an opportunity to make a little time up for the left side because I don't know if I told you, but it's a little tight around here. You know what I mean? You can really feel it when a little bit of freedom gets out, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's not like California. You guys got a lot of freedom out there.
Oh, I don't know about that. We just had Mr. Schwarzenegger
you have a new governor
last night, so my freedom, I'm not too happy about that.
You almost be pumped up.
Yeah, I actually I did a little Arnold impression. I said that his first order of business is to legalize steroids, and second is to legalize polygamy. So.
Yeah, I actually heard that. That was pretty funny.
Oh, thanks. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try and point at certain things on your website that I think are pertinent to this area because, like I said, we get no information out here, and
okay.
Maybe you can help us out and say let's just decide the action and the number here. I'm sorry, 610-667-WNWR. Every Wednesdays and Thursdays, 1 to 2 open minds.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is start off by spelling out the URL address of my website. It's THEHEMPEROR.net. So anybody having trouble finding it this morning, just thehemperor.net.
Yeah, it's very insightful too. I checked it out yesterday. I actually put in hemperor.net, but the Google search I found it real easy. It came right up.
Right.
Yeah, and where did you get that name, actually?
Well, you guys mentioned Jack Hare a little bit ago. Jack Hare has been a friend of mine for over 11 years now. And back in '96, I was just getting on the Internet, and I was sitting there, and a copy of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, Jack Hare's book, was sitting on the floor in front of me. And it just dawned on me, the Hemperor, Jack's book is based on hemp, and that's kind of how it got started.
Now, can you explain a little bit about hemp and what hemp is?
Well, hemp is basically the real name of the cannabis sativa plant, which is today called marijuana, a name that was basically created in the 1920s and 30s so that people wouldn't know the real facts behind hemp, which was our nation's primary industrial crop since its inception until basically the 1930s. It was on a decline from about the 1870s on because of the end of slavery. It was a very hard crop to produce up until the decorticating machine was invented, and at the in I believe 1917 or so, the decorticating machine was was invented that basically revolutionized the hemp industry, just like the cotton did to the cotton industry.
The cotton gin. Yeah, and what does the machine do? Does that separate the fibers of the plant?
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. Basically, you put the hemp in on one side, and it breaks it, and out the other side, you get the fiber, and it drops the woody core and the cellulose to the down to the floor, and you pick everything up, and the cellulose goes for plastics and bedding, and can make everything from things like in France they use hemp to produce what is called isochanvre, which is basically a cement that comes from mixing hemp herds and limestone together. And there's actually bridges in France that are over 800 years old that are made of this, and it's about 10 times lighter than cement and about 10 times stronger as well.
My big question is why? Why is hemp illegal? Is it because of big business?
Well,
they can't control the hemp?
I think it's definitely because of big business. You have companies like the DuPont company and William Randolph Hearst, Hearst newspaper company, that were worried about the invention of this decorticating machine, so they created the reefer madness propagandas of the 1930s, and Harry J. Anslinger, basically, who was a family member through Andrew Mellon, who was connected with the DuPont family and the Hearst company, basically conspired together to outlaw hemp to protect DuPont's future interests, as well as William Randolph Hearst's newspaper industry, because he was threatened. Because 1 acre of hemp produces as much paper as 4.1 acres of trees in the same amount of time. So that was a huge threat to Hearst, who owned huge amounts of timber lands that he intended on using for paper. And in 1901, the U.S. government did a study on sources for paper, and they determined that hemp was far and above the #1 source for creating paper.
And the hemp that you're speaking of is the same hemp today that is still produced and made into many different things, but for some reason just not in this country.
Correct.
So our country, who is the #1 polluter of the world, is the #1 taker of antidepressants and pharmaceuticals in the world, is also the only people basically in the world right now that are shutting the only thing that can save the planet. And like I said before on the show, if anybody out there wants to make $100,000, and like I said, people on Fear Factor eat some pretty disgusting stuff for $50,000. All you got to do is prove Jack Herrera wrong. Okay.
It's funny that you said that, because you're talking about Joe Rogan, who's a friend of both Jack and mine.
Well, Joe's. How do you know Joe?
Joe's a cool dude.
Well, I met
the Man
Joe
Show
at Jack's place back in February, and we've been friends ever since. In fact, I did a major interview, which you can find on my website, available on the She Who Remembers audio archives page, that was done with the four of us, with James Arthur, Jack Herrera, Joe Rogan, and myself. We go really heavy into some deep stuff. The original recording was about 10 or 11 hours long. I believe it was 7 hours after we edited it.
Can you tell me, was there any stimulants used during the interview?
No, none whatsoever, except, we're all legal, we've all got health issues that we are able under California Prop 215 to use cannabis legally.
Well, I applaud that prop, and New Jersey and Pennsylvania here, I actually was going to go to the City Council of Philadelphia and propose that we become the first city that just doesn't look at it as criminal,
right.
And the cops turn their head. And every time I said this on one of the local radio stations, they laughed erratically at me.
They call him a doper.
Yeah. Oh, I actually had
dope.
Right.
Well, I told you about that when I told the fella that the problem is, the criminalization. You got to decriminalize the drugs, and then you'll stop the problem. And he proceeded to call me a dope head and a doper.
Well,
so,
yeah, you can just look at countries like Holland, who have had decriminalized drugs for over 20 years, and they've got the lowest drug use rate of 12 to 18-year-olds in the Western world.
And Holland also. They don't look at, let's say, cannabis in the light they do here. I'll give you an example. My mom, she's a little older, and she actually said to me the other day, I never would smoke cigarettes because my mother always told me there could be a little pot in there. And the funniest thing is the cigarette's the dangerous part of the equation.
Right.
But she is fooled into believing that there's a little pot in there, and I could screw her for the rest of her life. When you're watching these commercials, John, what do you feel? I don't know if you've seen any of the pot commercials today, and they especially put them on around here. They have a young girl on the toilet, she's crying, and they switch to the parents, and they say, we're the youngest grandparents in the neighborhood, and
it's because of pot. Yeah.
And it's because of pot.
Right.
We actually just made a song 2 days ago.
A new commercial that's running out here in California that shows, they have a car accident on the screen, and then they say, marijuana is not as safe as you originally thought. And what they're basing this on is that a certain number of people are found with, and after fatal accidents are found with marijuana in the system. The only problem with that is that marijuana stays in the system for 30 days.
Right.
And by doing a drug test on these people has no bearing whatsoever whether or not they're under the influence of marijuana during the time of the accident.
How about how many of these fatal accidents are caused by liquor or beer?
Well,
yet there's thousands of people buying it every day.
It's the #2 killer in the country, not including fatal accidents and murders, which it's considered.
65%
I believe
of all the murders.
It's on my website on the Drug War Facts page. I believe that nearly 80% of all fatal accidents and murders are alcohol related.
And you also you had told me that you were a shaman. Is that correct?
Yes, I am a shaman.
Can you explain to the people in Philadelphia what a shaman is? Because the problem in Philadelphia, like I said, is it's so conservative. the word shaman is thrown around like it's, some sort of occultist or some sort of Satanist.
Well, shamanism is actually the world's oldest religion. It predates all religious dogmas and practices. Basically, shamanism was created around the development of consciousness, and in fact, James Arthur and I, and also another philosopher who died a couple years ago, Terence McKenna, we all have some pretty good foundation now with new research put out by Dr. Rick Strassman a couple years ago, which you can find on my website, that there's now a very large consideration towards thinking that entheogens, or they're also called psychedelics. Entheogen means to generate the God within. The word psychedelic means to make the mind clear or visible. And so basically, with this new evidence or research by Dr. Rick Strassman, who found that the pineal gland, which is the only non-dualistic organ in the human brain, produces the world's most powerful psychedelic drug, DMT, right in the center of our brains. And in fact, the human brain spends 10% of all of its energy just transporting this DMT drug around the brain, so that to make sure that we have enough of it. So literally, we're in a psychedelic state of consciousness all the time. And what's interesting is these entheogenic plants, or sacraments, or psychedelics, however you want to call them, are all, or many of them are very similarly or closely related to DMT, like psilocin and psilocybin found in various types of, like cubensis mushrooms, etc., is almost identical, except I believe it's a hydrogen attachment to the molecule. That's the only difference between it and DMT produced naturally in the brain. And psilocybin or psilocin is actually one of the few drugs, including DMT, that's absorbed directly through the blood-brain barrier with no resistance whatsoever. So our brains love it and eat it up. Yeah, and what I was getting at before is there's starting to come to light that as a living organism develops from the amoeba into several celled organisms up through the evolutionary scale, the first thing that it produces, basically an amoeba, is a food tube, and on the back of this food tube outcrops the pineal gland, and then that's the first sign of multi-celled organism, basically, is this pineal gland.
The pineal gland looks like a pine cone, correct?
Yes, or a pine, yeah.
It's the only, and just to explain to the people a little bit more basically in Philadelphia here, the pineal gland is the only part of the brain that touches both parts of the brain. It's directly in the center of the brain, and what happens is the pineal gland actually starts to build scar tissue young in life in America here, right after children learn about the reality of Santa Claus.
Right. Well, not only that, but fluoride that's in all of our waters is known to calcify the pineal gland.
So calcifying basically means
shutting it down.
There you
go.
You
have to realize that under this research by Dr. Rick Strassman, the pineal gland was literally discovered to be the third eye. It's got a cornea and a retina, etc. If you look at lizards, in fact, I was looking at this iguana last week, that right on the top of the head, these lizards have the pineal gland right there at the surface, and it senses light and things. And it's still used by those animals. But basically, as animals evolve, the pineal gland seems to visitate outcroppings around itself, like further layers of brain and limb, so that it can help itself acquire more tryptamines or more entheogens.
So, Jan, another thing that I actually wanted to get to in your website was you had a great deal about the 9/11 incident. I know here in Philadelphia, it really hit close to home since we were directly in the center of everything that was happening.
Right.
Out in California, you're looking at it from a little bit more, I'd say, the outside. How does the people in California or you see the events that happened that day?
Well, I think most of the people out here believes that it was just a bin Laden, or now because of the media propaganda, bin Laden / Saddam Hussein conspiracy against the U.S.
So the people there believe almost like the people here do?
Yes.
Now, how about you personally? I mean, I know you have done some investigations, a lot of
hemperor.net. So, anybody having trouble finding it this morning, just thehemperor.net.
Yeah, it's very insightful, too. I checked it out yesterday. I actually put in hemperor.net, but the Google search, I found it real easy. It came right up.
Right.
Yeah, and where did you get that name, actually?
Well, you guys mentioned Jack Herr a little bit ago. Jack.
To this area, because, like I said, we get no information out here, and
okay.
Maybe you can help us out and say let's just decide the action. And the number here, I'm sorry, 610-667-WNWR. Every Wednesdays and Thursdays, 1 to 2 open minds.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is start off by spelling out the URL address of my website. It's THEHE.
The world is it's always a different time somewhere else, and the good thing about Philadelphia here is now we have an opportunity to make a little time up for the left side, because I don't know if I told you, but it's a little tight around here. You know what I mean? You can really feel it when a little bit of freedom gets out, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's not like California. You guys got a lot of freedom out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that. We just had
that's what we think.
So right now we actually have a guest, and the guest's name's Jan Irvin. Like I said, he is the founder of hemperor.net, which is an information site with so much information it will spin your head. So right now we're going to pull Jan up. Jan? Hello, Jan?
Yes, Patrick, how are you doing this, I guess for you this afternoon?
Yeah, it's afternoon, morning there, and that's the amazing thing about
Schwarzenegger.
You have a new governor.
Yeah.
Last night, so my freedom, I'm not too happy about that.
You all must be pumped up.
Yeah, I actually I did a little Arnold impression. I said that his first order of business is to legalize steroids, and second is to legalize polygamy. So.
Yeah, I actually heard that. That was pretty funny.
Oh, thanks. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try and point at certain things on your website that I think are pertinent to